Enoch Burke was back in court there last week in the High Court. He secured an application or an injunction, a temporary injunction, against the appeal over his dismissal. He was dismissed, remember, from his job, his employment with the Wilson's Hospital School, but he still has an appeal through the education system, the process by which teachers can appeal dismissals and appeal disciplinary sanctions and so on, and he still has an appeal to go in that. That appeal was to be heard last week in a hotel in Tullamore, and there was a three-person panel who were going to hear his appeal. One of those persons was a gentleman called Kieran Christie, and Kieran Christie is the General Secretary of ASTI, the Teachers Union, or one of the Teachers Unions, the Association of Secondary Teachers of Ireland. Kieran Christie, Mr. Burke objected to being on the appeal because Mr. Burke said that Christie could not be impartial as his union had a particular policy in relation to how students should be addressed from a transgender perspective, and a reasonable and impartial observer would have a grave concern that Mr. Christie could not approach my appeal from a neutral and unbiased standpoint, Mr. Burke said, and his position was that ASTI advises schools to use the pronouns that students request to be addressed by, but not everyone agrees. So Mr. Burke objected to Mr. Christie being on the appeal panel, and he went to the High Court last week and sought an injunction on the basis that Mr. Christie should recuse himself from the appeal, and on one other ground as well. There's a recording Mr. Burke alleges in a WhatsApp message. It's a video or audio recording in a WhatsApp message allegedly exchanged between the former principal of the school, Eve McShane, and the chairman of the school's board. This message was a recording of the school service last year where Mr. Burke publicly outlined his objections to a direction by the school to call a student at the school by a different name and the pronoun they. He claims that the clip is important because the school has placed a huge amount of weight on this particular clip and on the alleged conduct of Mr. Burke at this religious ceremony, and he's looking for that particular clip to be made available to him. He claims the clip features his, what he describes as respectful and measured contribution at the service, where he says he asked Miss McShane to withdraw her direction to call a then student by a different name and pronoun. He claims that the school board has not provided a proper response to this request to have the clip, nor has it confirmed the existence of the clip. The judge then, last week on Thursday, ruled that Mr. Burke had raised fair issues in his application and was therefore entitled to a temporary injunction halting the hearing of the appeal. The judge did point out that she was making no findings of fact in relation to Mr. Burke's claims other than that fair issues had been raised by him, and if he can raise fair issues in his application for a temporary injunction, well then it will be granted. The injunction was granted on an ex parte basis, that is, with only one side being heard. It will return before the High Court this week. So that is the position in relation to the long-running battle between Mr. Burke and Wilson's Hospital School, and this has to do with the final leg, as it were, his appeal against his termination of employment with Wilson's Hospital School. As I say, that particular appeal was to go ahead last week in a hotel in Tullamore, probably the Bridge House, but it has been temporarily halted on foot of Mr. Burke's injunction, and the case is back before the High Court again this week. Hope you find this video useful. If you do, I would appreciate if you gave it the thumbs up down below. Thanks a lot.